Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Ian Bruce and this is Interviews from Quito, the program where we explore some of the big challenges facing this country and the region. In today's program, Viva nos queremos, we want to stay alive. Women here in Ecuador have again turned out in huge numbers to protest against gender-based violence, as they did in other parts of Latin America and the world. But what impact are these protests having? Is there any sign that violence against women is decreasing? And what effect is the rightward shift in politics here having? To talk about this, we're joined by Mayra Tirira. She's an activist in the movement here. But first, let's take a look at this video. Thank you very much, Mayra. How did this year's march compare with the year before? Maybe you could describe to our viewers a little bit what happened on Saturday the 24th.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for this space. For us, this is, as you said, is the third march. And if we compare, because this is the third one, if we compare with the last year, I think that we have much more people because we are talking about 10,000 people.
10,000 this year?
10,000 people this year, and the last year was the half, like 5,000.
So that's a significant growth.
Yeah, a significant growth.
And what happened on the day?
New different activists, new different people also, because the previous years it tend to be most of the time like the same persons. It's like all of the persons which are fighting against women violence like during the year, but I think that this year we have more people involved as students, like people from universities, indigenous people. We have also moms, for example, moms and families during the march. And I think that it was really positive because like new people, different activists, different persons were in this march.
So why do you think that is? Why has it grown quite significantly?
Yeah, because like the years before, it's like it was the first march. So we start like to have a position now in the public space. So we have like more position, we have more cases, and all of the cases starting all of the cases start to develop in the in the public area. So we are with them, we are with victims, we are fighting in the cases, and I think like that permits or that allows that people start like having this conscious about violence against women, and therefore they went to the march.
So the issue is more visible now than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually look at the situation with gender-based violence here in Ecuador, has the actual situation changed since last year? Have there been any achievements?
Well, now we have a law. We have a law to prevention violence against women. But we have a lot of problems with this law because this law, it doesn't start to work really well because we don't have enough public policies to make it perfectly operationalization, right?
This is the law that was presented to the Assembly last year, is that right?
Yeah, that's the law. And I think that permits that the cases start to, it never stops. It seems like it never stops.
But what exactly are the problems with the law then? Just explain those a bit more.
Well, we don't have enough public policies to make the law works. Yeah, to make the law effective.
What kind of policies are needed?
For example, like the governments, the local governments, they have to make the law effective, and we don't have enough policies to make the law effective in these governments, in these local governments, for example. And another big problem that we have with the law is like the Ministry of Justice, which was like the rector of this law. It just gone because the president he just said that we have to close that ministry.
Because that was one of the ministries that's been fused with other ministries.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so take it at local level. You mentioned local governments. What kind of things would you like to see local governments be doing to implement that law?
Well, the law, it says that you should have like measures, and these measures of prevention, for example, we can have like effective like measures to protect women when they are like victims of sexual abuse or domestic violence. Like the governments, local governments can give the victims these measures to protect them.
But you're talking about women's refuges, centers, or what kind of things?
Yeah, it also they can make like these refuges for women, but they can also like they can give like papers, law like rights in paper to make the women protect themselves against violence.
Right, right. I mean, if we look at the situation of femicides specifically in Ecuador, what is the situation now in terms of numbers, the tendencies? Is it increasing, decreasing, static?
Okay, in this year we have approximately like 18 cases of femicides in this year, and I think it's not decreasing because of this lack of policies and this lack of effective laws to make a stop these crimes against women. If we compare with the previous years, for example, in 2014, when the criminal code was expelled in Ecuador, we have, for example, just a few cases. But now, if we compare like year over year, we have seen how these rates have increased during this period.
I mean, I remember having this conversation before. Is it actually that the number of women being killed has increased? Or is there also an issue that, well, because people are more aware of the problem, you know, there's better reporting, you know, the numbers are being registered more effectively? I don't know.
I think, like, we cannot really say if the women, if the murders against women have increased, but we can say that we have more femicides. And why is this? Because if we compare like the statistics, we can see how the femicide as crime femicide have increased. Because I don't know if we should compare with the previous years what happened with murders or what happened with homicides, because most of the times like crimes against women was not a crime as femicide, it was a crime like homicide. Right. So I think if we can compare like the statistics, we can see if femicide has really increased or not, because maybe we now just have more femicides as crimes.
Right, right. But I mean, the fact that people are more aware of the problem is a good thing, right?
Yeah, people are more aware of the problem, but I think that you are just aware of the problem. You are not doing enough public policies, enough effective laws to make like the violence against women stop.
What's the situation with the law on abortion here in Ecuador now? What has that changed? Is it developing? Is there a debate?
It's already a debate. Now we're debating for reforms in our criminal code. So we are fighting again. We are fighting for having the right of abortion, at least in case of violation, because in case of rapes.
In case of rape.
In case of rapes, because the abortion is still a crime in Ecuador. You can go. A woman can go to the jail for 3 years if you commit this crime.
But where is that debate? The debate is in the assembly now?
Yeah, it's in the assembly now, because now they are like arguing for the first project for the right of abortion, but just
In
in
the case of
cases
rape.
of rape.
But is it actually is it stuck or is it moving forward? I mean, are you confident that it will become law?
We're confident on it, but we don't know. Now they are debating. We are in the first debate, and I think that the next year we are going to have like more results about what is happening with the law.
What's the attitude of the government to legislation on this? Because at the beginning of Lenin Moreno's term, he talked actually quite a lot about violence against women, and it seemed to be one of the issues the government was going to take seriously. But has that actually resulted? Has it taken it seriously?
I don't think so. If you see what happened with the Ministry of Justice, it's like if the government has like enough will to do something for women's rights, I think that it was a really big mistake to just close the Ministry of Justice, because the Ministry of Justice was the rector of the law for prevention of the violence against women. So I'm a quite like shy to think about what is going to happen with the right of abortion in case of rapes, at least.
So has another ministry taken on that role now? No.
They say that they are going to create a secretary, but we are also waiting for that.
Right, okay. So there's another campaign though, isn't there? There's a new campaign called Aborto Libre SE, Free Abortion EC for Ecuador. Tell me about that. What's the aim there?
Well, this campaign was created for a lot of women, a lot of organizations which are fighting for the rights of women, and we are claiming for the right of free abortion, not just in case of rapes, because we believe that women all the time are making these procedures or abortions, but not all of the women go to the jail for commit this crime, because just the women which are more like young or in poverty situation, like they are the only one who are going to jail, but not all women. So we are claiming for this free abortion for all women, and that the Ministry of Health can support the abortions for women.
And has that made any progress, that campaign?
We are fighting, and I think that one part of the campaign was this presentation, or this like making efforts in the assembly for the at least the right of abortion in case of rape.
Right. But what kind of a campaign is being mounted around this now?
I think it's like more it's like more at media level communication, and I think that, for example, in the march, if you see like the third block, we have I think that it was one of the biggest. It was like the green march, the green flag. So
the third block was the free abortion block?
Yeah, it was the free abortion block.
And it was the biggest?
Yeah, I think it was the biggest.
Good. Let's go back a little bit. Vivas nos queremos. I mean, how did it emerge and how did it develop?
Okay. Vivas nos queremos, it emerged like demanding like some kind of justice for victims and families of femicide, because having a result of justice in the system of justice is really difficult here. So we were trying to make something different, something for families, something for victims that like recognize them, but also support them. That's why we create like Vivas Nos Queremos with a lot of organizations and women to support families, to encourage families to continue their fights in justice, and to make these problems as a public problem in the public space, because we believe like domestic violence should not be just a domestic thing, should not be just a private thing. It should be a public problem, and the state and the government should do something for it, because they have to guarantee our rights.
You talk about problems in the judicial system
Yeah.
to deal with these cases. You're a lawyer, you deal with a lot of those cases. What kind of problems do you encounter?
There's a lot of re-victimization. For example, at the times also, it's like you can spend in a case more than 3, 4, 5 years. We just ended the process of femicide, and it lasts more than 5 years, for example. So we believe that...
But why? Why does it take so long?
Because they say that there's a lot of cases, there is not enough judges, there is not enough attorneys for it, there is not like doctors, there is not a lot of psychologists. So there's a lot of problems inward of the judicial system.
But what about the attitudes of judges? Have they changed? Are they more receptive to these cases or not?
I think that we have some judges which are specialized in these violence cases, but the judges which are actually making the sentence for in cases of femicide, they are like normal lawyers, they are like criminal lawyers, and they don't have like this specialization in women's rights. And we can see it when we go to the courts to fight for our rights in these cases, not just in femicide, also in rapes or in sexual abuse, or I don't know, in any case related with women. We have like these problems with the judges which are not specialized, because they tend to they tend to make these stigmatizations in cases they make these stigmatizations for women, and they do not create in victims.
So that when you say they stigmatize the women, they don't accept their arguments, they don't understand?
For example, they say things like the husband has the right to hit the women, but softly.
Yeah.
Actually, we're fighting now in a case like in the judicial system, but in the administrative aid department, because a judge, she really said that the men had the right to hit the women, but softly. And we have like these criteria for judges.
Going back to the movement itself, how does it organize? What forms of organization has it taken on? And have those changed over the last few years?
Yeah, because we are like women, young, families also, but we can see like over these years how, for example, we can see new faces in the movement, new women, new young women which are like part of Vivas Nos Queremos, that are making, for example, a lot of activities. We are like painting, for example, walls in schools. We are making this education for women, education for teachers, for example. I think that we are growing as a movement and incorporating new women, new people,
but
new
is
families.
it a movement that has, I don't know, local branches in different communities, or how does that work?
Okay, I think that principally we are like working in Quito, but we have different branches around the country. For example, in Cuenca, in Loja, also in Lago Agrio. So we have like different branches, but they are part of different groups in the localities doing or arguing for women's rights.
What about the relationship with other kinds of women's groups and other social movements? I mean, what kind of alliances have you built up? Do you want to build up?
I think that we work together, because all of us are working for violence against violence women. So I think that we are working together, even with other groups, for example, environmental groups. We are working too, because I think that we have one goal, and I think the goal is like the state and the government starts to protect our rights.
But what about, say, the relationship with the indigenous movement or with the trade unions?
I think, yeah, for example, in this march we have some indigenous women because indigenous women also are part of this big group in the march. We work together in some cases. For example, in cases of women which are fighting for their civil rights, of participation rights, we work together in those cases. So we make in different periods these like
alliances. Yeah, yeah. How does the situation or the movement here in Ecuador compare with other countries in Latin America? Because the last few years we've seen a spectacular growth of women's mobilizations in Argentina, Brazil, many countries of Latin America. How does the situation compare here in Ecuador, do you think?
I think that we are growing. I think that women's rights is one of the most important social movements now in Ecuador, because all of our agenda, we are all the time in media because of the cases.
Or perhaps the most important.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important. I'm not too sure that we are the most important, but
we haven't seen demonstrations of 10,000 people.
Yeah,
by
but
other
I think
movements.
we are one of the most important, and I think it is because, like, women are starting to being aware of our rights.
Do you think there are lessons to learn from those other countries in Latin America, or that they should be learning from you?
I think that sure, like we try to work together with other groups. For example, now in Argentina, we are trying to learn about how the Argentina movements, they are fighting for the right of abortion. For us, it's like an example. We try to work together to learn from them and try to make our own fight here.
A lot of people would say there's been a clear shift in the political situation in Latin America to the right in the last year or two. And very spectacularly in Brazil, for example, where the election of a very far right-wing candidate as the president-elect. And we saw women come out leading the opposition to that with the Eli Now movement. Okay, the situation in Ecuador is different, but some people would say there's also been a shift to the right in Ecuador. How does that change in the political situation affect the women's movement?
I think that we should be aware of these changes, because it might, maybe we are not going to be able to stop this shift, but we should be together to try to support each other, and at least to know allowed that our rights start to make them that we start to have less rights than before. So I think that we have to support each other, and we have to make different, activities in order to make aware the people, the society, about what is happening now with this shift to the rights, and how it can make some bad things for them, some damage even for the society.
I mean, in the case of Brazil, for example, there seems to have been a real increase in the number of attacks on trans people, on women, as a result of this political shift. Is that anything like that happening in Ecuador, do you think?
I think that not like in Brazil, but we have some cases. For example, last year we have a case of Samuel Chambers, and he was a normal guy, and he was murdered, and it might be related to some LGBT population. So I think that it could be, but we should be together. We should be. Yeah, I think that we should be together to resist all of this shift to the right, and all of this kind of make our rights less for us.
I mean, what kind of campaigns do you hope to develop in the next year?
Well, with Vivas Nos Queremos, we are thinking about in education, but this education, like in these places which we have more poverty, for example, we have more crime, and we are trying to work with them in rights, in women's rights, and not also in women's rights, but in human rights too.
Do you find women in the poorer communities in Ecuador are receptive to your campaigns? Or is it still a sort of urban, student, middle class kind of base?
Yeah, I think that we have to work on it, because we work with a lot of families, for example, and the families, most of the time, the families which we work, for example, they do not have enough money or enough education, like middle class, but they are kind of really aware of the situation of violence against women, and they are doing it because they live it. Yep, and they are doing something for resist that violence.
Really? What kind of things?
I don't know. They are like women are organization themselves in the local towns, for example. They are trying to make education for them, and also they call us for help them in some cases.
You talked about schools. What kind of stuff are you doing in schools?
Well, we do some capacitations for them. Yeah, some training. Yeah, some training. Yeah,
for children.
Children and for young people too, from teenagers. For
How does that work? What kind of message are you giving them?
I think that we have to start working first in rights, like in human rights, and how important.
Just so people understand.
People understand the situation of being a human and why we need to have this respect for each other, and then we try to talk more about women's rights and why women should have an equal situation as men.
So 24th of November, 25th of November 2019, what are you hoping for?
I think that we hope a march, but bigger than this year. And I think that we want to involve like more people which are not involved yet, and that's why we try to invite them to be part of Vivas nos queremos. We are an open space, and we also want to make each person like these measures for fight against women's violence.
Mayra, I'm afraid we've run out of time, but thank you very much indeed. We've been talking to Mayra Tirira about the big protests here in Ecuador against violence against women. Thank you very much for watching Interviews from Quito. I'm Ian Bruce. Until next time.
Thanks.
Thanks.